Well, I see the icons are showing some people are here. I'm just waiting to see when it shows up on my laptop here. Should be any second now, I hope. This thing's kind of finicky. Sometimes, as you've seen, it'll go up right away, and then other times it doesn't. Okay, it looks like we're here. Okay, well, that wasn't too bad. And we're still scawampus on the camera. Alright, so let's see which way I need to go here to straighten this thing out a little bit. That's what I thought. Hold on a second. Okay. Well, that's a little better. Okay, we'll go with that. At least it doesn't look too bad. Hello, everybody. This is my, my third one today. I did a live stream this morning. Then I did a recording and put it up because, YouTube, what they've done is they have this situation where they have your recorded videos go up on the videos, but if it's a live one, it goes on the live. So even though if you're subscribed to me, you'll get all of them. If you're not and you just go on the channel, you'll only see my videos, my recorded videos. You won't see my live ones. You have to go over to the live link there, the button, and hit live to see the live one. So basically, what I don't know why YouTube did that, but it's been a pain in the neck because people don't realize that I have a lot more up on my channel than I do. I've had several people ask me, "What happened to all your videos? I don't see your latest videos, and a whole bunch of them are gone and all that." Well, that's why they moved them over to that live channel. I told you about that. Oh, probably a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month ago. I don't remember, something like that. Anyway, so if you haven't looked at the live stream that I put up this morning, and if you haven't looked at the recorded one that I put up a little after lunchtime, I guess it was somewhere in there. It's about the Utah doctor that the government is going after. They've indicted him, his head nurse, and two other people for them trying to protect children against the OWS. That's what I've talked about now for the last few videos. And what I was waiting for, as I said several weeks ago, was when I first brought this out, was some confirmation of a place where you can donate money to their legal defense that I would personally vet so that I would know that it is legitimate. So I saw a friend of mine sent me, actually Brand Thornton, my good friend Brand Thornton, who was with Bundy Ranch with me, sent me the link to the place where you can learn about what the case is and also donate if you want or support in other ways. And so I immediately took that over to my contact there in the doctor's office and made sure that that was legitimate. And she verified that it is legitimate. So then I put both videos, the one on the live stream and the one on the recording today, so that you could go and see what that's about and donate to them because they're going to need it. As you know, anybody that stands up against this tyrant system, especially on this part of it, they come after really bad, really hard. And so, despite the fact, as I said in the last video that I recorded, these horrible things that are happening around the world, the wars, this horrible earthquake in Turkey and Syria that's destroyed the lives, literally, of thousands and thousands of people, both taking their lives and maiming them or having to lose their homes. That's so big that the governments are going to have to step up. And of course, Syria is under sanctions, and the humanitarian situation here should take precedence. But we have wicked, evil people in the Western countries, and so I don't know how that's going to go. But at any rate, do what you can where you can. Your conscience, let your conscience be your guide. Help out somewhere, even if it's only spreading the information. But for certain on this thing with this doctor standing up and being heroic, look at the case as it's put down there in the description box, not of this video because this is different, but I'm just referring back to the last two. When you see those, go into the description box and you'll see the links where you can make a donation and also learn about the case. There are two links there. They're good people. I've met them personally and talked to them, and so I know that they were trying to do the right thing. So at any rate, I just wanted to say that up front. Now I do have my chat laptop here, so you can bet that I'm going to be using that a little bit. I'm doing this early in the day for a number of reasons. I have to do some things tonight, and one of which is I'm probably going to go out. So just so you know, that's one of the big reasons. But I checked before I came on. It looks like most everybody, the redacted's done. I didn't see anybody coming up right away like Carlin Nixon or the Duran or Brian Berletic with the new Atlas or any of those folks. So I figured, okay, well, let's get this done now while I can. All right, let me take a swig of water here, and that's all this is. It's water because I'm going to be driving here in a little bit, so don't think that it's something else because it isn't. Okay. Why did I call this Pipelines, Pooplines, and War Crimes? Well, anybody that's at all aware, despite the fact that the MSM tries to avoid these issues, for instance, what's really happening in Ukraine, and why Russia did what it did. And I'm not saying I like any of this war. That's not the point. The point is that when the bully in the schoolyard picks a fight with you and you punch back, you usually get blamed for it. And that's exactly what's happened to Russia in this situation. The bully goaded them into the fight. They had to respond defensively, and as a result, now they're getting expelled from school. That's kind of how it always goes. You should know enough information by now, having gotten information from my channel and from those that I have suggested, because you can always go to the MSM and get their spin on things. But if you go to the ones that I've suggested before, I just mentioned them, the new Atlas with Brian Berletic. This is on YouTube. Redacted with Clayton and Natalie Morris, which they just ended their live stream just now. Like I said, the Duran, both with Alexander McCurse and Alex Christoforou, and then they have their separate YouTube channels. Of course, David Knight, and all the others that I've talked about, Garland Nixon. There are a whole bunch of them. They're giving the good information. And Scott Ritter has he's the weapons inspector from back during the Gulf War and all that, who exposed a lot of lies and things. He has his own channel too. I think it's called The Inspector, Scott Ritter, something like that. Anyway, you'll see it on Redacted and Garland Nixon and the Duran and all those, because they've had Scott on and they have his links to his work. Again, I don't want to hear anybody make accusations against Scott Ritter. He got into some legal trouble, and I'm not going to try to explain what that was, because in my estimation it doesn't matter, because he's an expert in his field of warfare, biological, chemical, nuclear weapons. He inspected for those. He worked under orders with the UN, not for the UN really, but was part of the inspection teams and all that. The guy knows his business, okay? Don't hold the few apparent, I'm not even saying they were what he was accused of, but the apparent mistakes that he may have fallen into. And again, I don't know all the circumstances, but he is an excellent source for information in his field, and to ignore him because of whatever mistake he made that got him into legal trouble is foolhardy on your part if you do that, because that's exactly what the deep state does in the intelligence community. They tried to smear my career. Oh, he was never in the army. Oh, he was only a lieutenant. He was never a lieutenant colonel. Oh, he was never constant. Oh, he didn't he didn't do this and he didn't do that. You don't do that to people that serve in the military. You appreciate the service that they did, but when they try to smear you, they do it because you're trying to tell the truth. So I've been part of that as far as on the receiving end, and of course Scott Ritter's got it really bad. I'm glad to see he's been able to use his expertise to start his YouTube channels and his blog sites, his writings and these types of things, and I hope he's being successful at that. He certainly deserves it. And people will ask, well, Roy, why don't you do that? Well, because, and I explained this a long time ago. If I tried to make money from my YouTube or from anything like that, I would be accused of doing what I do for money. And whether it's my military, political, historical commentary, or my spiritual religious commentary, I don't want anybody to accuse me that I'm doing it for filthy lucre. I do it because I feel a responsibility. And I think Scott's that way too, obviously, but he has been maligned quite a bit. And so he needs to make a living in any way he can. So I would suggest that you support him. His information is absolutely incredible and important. Okay, with all of that said, I think that was enough of the preliminaries. Again, why am I calling this Pipelines, Pooplines, and War Crimes? Well, people are probably wondering why I'm not talking more about this whole situation with the Nord Stream and what's come out with that, with the Seymour Hersh articles. But we knew all this anyway. Maybe not all the intricate details that Hersh has been able to bring out. Of course, he's been accused of, the establishment has accused him of making it all up, and that's hogwash, because anybody with a half a brain can see that they're just trying to cover their lies, and that includes the lies of the White House, the Department of Defense, the CIA, and the State Department. All of those people are lying about the situation, and they're doing it because they really didn't have the military involved. Not really, even though they were using Navy divers trained at the Panama divers training facilities there. Who they were actually working for, I'm not even sure they were actually enlisted or officer people at the time that they did this operation in the Baltic Sea up here, so that they could have plausible deniability. But regardless, everyone is lying about it, and the Europeans, especially the Germans, don't have the guts or the courage to call out the United States for what they've done. The United States actually committed an act of war against Germany and Europe, actually, and they've done that during this whole thing, actually, emptying out their military stockpile so they can't defend themselves. Makes you wonder if the United States is going to invade Europe. In a way, they have. If you've been watching what they're doing, assaulting their economic system and all of that, they absolutely have. The European people have become vassals of the United States, and I've talked about that quite a bit. But anyway, getting back on this pipeline thing, it was absurd when they came out and said that Russia had blown up their own pipeline. We knew that. That made absolutely no sense. But see, these people in the deep state and the neocons and the people like Victoria Nuland, all that, who have this thing in for Russia. And of course, caused the Maidan coup back in Ukraine in 2014, so they could set up a country not only to launder their money and to do their illegal stuff, their bio stuff, et cetera, but also to build a big army to invade the Donbass and then invade Russia. And that was really what was going on. And anybody who understands or who's been in the military or intelligence networks, history at the very least, understands all of that. So anyway, back when this Nord Stream situation occurred back in the fall, I came out at that time and I said it was definitely the United States, but it was probably not the DoD intimately involved. They were there during the exercise back in the summer to basically make a cover, but I said that it was an intelligence operation. That's how I called it at the time. Not a military operation, but an intelligence operation covered by the military, meaning the military made the camouflage above all this thing happened beneath. And I said that the CIA have, they do have submariner vehicles, I'll just put it that way, okay? And they apparently recruited these divers from the way Seymour Hersh is saying it, from the naval facility in Panama. So there I go again. Where's my cup? Hold on a second. I should have used this cup. This. I swear, this cup is like my motto now. Next to the intelligence community is our most dangerous domestic enemy. This is I should have put my, instead of using my stainless steel cup, I should have had this up today, right? So anyway, I didn't. Actually, I thought about it and then I forgot. Okay. So as I was just saying, we basically called this thing, at least I looked at it. I think there were some other people that I'm sure Scott Ritter did. I don't recall exactly what he said, but everybody knew the United States was involved. It looked like maybe possibly the United Kingdom because, Britain, because the prime minister at the time gave a call to our people here in I think it was to Blinken, if I'm not mistaken, which apparently was heard by the Russians, um, saying that the job had been done. Well, why would they have to do that? Why would Britain do that if it was the United States and using some help from Norway, which is apparently the case, and that makes sense too because that's right up there, of course. But it's primarily, I think, just to it's always nice to have in these intelligence circles a second testimony, so to speak. And of course, all these European vassals, they want to get, petted by the United States and congratulated and given gifts and, made to feel good. So I'm sure that the Prime Minister of Britain at the time, wanted to make sure that she got her little strokes. So at any rate, it looks like we were right about that. Not all the details. This report from this reporter has been eye-opening. Of course, again, like I said, it's been denied, but that's not surprising because it's a war crime. Okay, it's a terrorist attack, possibly, very likely, against Germany and against Russia and certain other states in Europe, and it's definitely an act of war. Andrew Napolitano on his channel, if you want to go see Judge Andrew Napolitano on YouTube, he talked about it, I think today and a few other days, but I know I saw a post today about that. Redacted just got done interviewing Scott Ritter, talking about it being an act of war, and Douglas McGregor has said so much too. He has not accused the United States. I'd like to know what he thinks now with Seymour Hersh coming out with this article and with all of the details. I suspect he will probably say something, but he's a retired colonel, so he has to be a little careful about how he approaches things, and I certainly understand that. And that's why I said, and possibly because of the way that my career was handled in the military, and it put me in a position where I was not a retired officer, I can speak for these people that can't speak because they are retired and still subject to the UCMJ. So I think that was all a divine plan that even I didn't see at the time, but it certainly has turned out that way because I've been able to say things that nobody else could. All right, so that's the first thing on the pipelines. The U.S. did it. And it was an intelligence operation so the Department of Defense could claim that they don't know anything about it, so it wouldn't be a military attack. Okay? So it wouldn't be an act of war. But in essence, it turns out to be an act of war regardless. Okay? Because the President of the United States ordered it. All right? So even if you try to hide it under the intelligence umbrella, it's still an act of war. Okay? You committed, the U.S. committed an attack, a destruction of infrastructure, and infrastructure that could be life-threatening if the Europeans don't have, especially the Germans, in, of course, the way the weather is in that area of the world. Not to mention other things. It shut down their industry. There's a lot of industry had to shut down, and for the Chancellor of Germany, and to lack the cojones to really be mad and hang up on Biden and say we're not having any more to do with you. No, we're not sending anything more to Ukraine. Period. We're depleting our own military. Not that we're really afraid of Russia. No, you guys are the ones that we're afraid of. You've got something over us, but we're not going to play games anymore. Okay? They might as well. I mean, their legs have been cut out from underneath them now anyway. Their economies are falling apart. They've had their energy supplies depleted. They've been told that they have to support a war that really has nothing to do with them. They've been chopped off at the knees. Actually, I'd say they've been castrated. A little further up, right? So that's the first thing. Pipelines, poop lines. What do I mean by that? The lies, the bullshit, the constant stream of bowel movements coming out of Biden's mouth, Blinken's mouth, Victoria Nuland's mouth, Kamala Harris. Actually, she takes other things into her mouth rather than just the BS that comes out, but you get my drift. The CIA, well, remember Pompeo, who was a CIA director, and he had been, in the Trump White House and all that. He said that even though at West Point he was told that he was supposed to be upright and always tell the truth and all that, then the CIA he learned to lie, and that's what they teach him, and that's a fact. Okay. So just as my channel says here, the intelligence community is our most dangerous domestic enemy, and it continues to be so. And now they're warring against our allies. So what did I say? Well, I don't know, this time last year, I was saying, like Augustus said to his people, that it's remarking about the king over Judea. That was King Herod, who was really a Russian puppet. He wasn't even Jewish. He was Edomite. But at any rate, he said it'd be better because Herod had killed his members of his family, especially one son that Augustus was talking about. And he says it'd be better to be Herod's pig than his son. And again, as Kissinger said, and I'm echoing it with that whole thing about Herod, it's better to be the enemy of the United States than its ally, because they will stick that cold steel blade in your back and twist it and bleed you out and cause you pain when it's in their interest to keep their hegemony. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So shame on Europe for cowering to these criminals over here, the mafiosos. That's really what they're doing. These guys pay protection money. You think we're giving them money for taking care of their defenses? Think again. We are laundering crap through Ukraine and through Europe, and we're stealing their manufacturing ability, and they're paying us essentially protection money. That's really what's happening here, with their loyalty and being willing to do anything the United States tells them to do, whether it's legal, illegal, whatever. They don't care. And covering up this attack on the pipeline is poop. Okay, they're supporting poop coming out of the United States, plain and simple. That's all we've got in this country anymore. It's all we've had for a long time. And some people say, well, at least since the Kennedy assassination. Well, I think it's gone way, way before that. We had problems even not long after the Constitution was ratified back in 1789. Okay, so that's the thing with poop lines. We've just got tons of bullshit coming out of everybody's mouth, and nobody's willing to call it. Our congressmen are often they're worried about this balloon. Remember I said the other day, I said, I really doubt this is what they're saying it is. It sounds like some kind of a, take your mind off of all. And I know it sounds a little infantile. We always say there's a distraction, but this was ridiculous. With the satellites that China has, with the other flyovers they've got, with the people they're letting in our southern border. Chinese are coming in there, real Russians, Iranians, who knows who. And they're worried about this balloon going. It was just such a shit show. It just disgusted me. And of course, they're attacking your First Amendment still, your Second Amendment. They're not fixing anything. They put on all this drama and all this theater. And I'm talking about MTG. Thomas Massey's a little of an exception. I think he's serious. I know Louis Gohmert was serious when he's in there. Chip Roy maybe's okay. Rand Paul's wishy-washy. I don't think we have anybody in there. It's like I said, we're going to have to take care of ourselves, and that's going to be dangerous because they're going to come after you. Which brings up another issue on the poop lines. As much as I am critical of the history and the claims of the origins of the Catholic Church, what the Southern Poverty Law Center and the FBI was supposed to have kicked the Southern Poverty Law Center out of the way some time ago when their information started to show that they had an agenda that was contrary to the fidelity, bravery, and integrity of the FBI. Well, at any rate, now the FBI has gone back and put together, this came out a few days ago. I think Tucker Carlson has covered both the pipeline situation, as I was just saying, and also this situation here. I think he has. I know some others have. Where the FBI is now looking at the Catholic Church as anybody who believes in the Latin Mass, or the scriptures. For instance, they're against certain rear end entry type between male. That's what it's always supposed to be, but anyway, rear end entry type. What I call to replace the word that's commonly used. That sounds like duck. I like to use my little acronym called Donkey Phallus Posterior Penetration. Um, so the Catholic Church is against that, of course, against the slaying of the young and innocent, a whole bunch of things really. And now because of those their their religious convictions, the FBI is basically moving to call them terrorists. This is wrong. Again, I don't want to be a member of the Catholic. I was a member of the Catholic Church one time. I've told you I was an altar boy. Yeah, I was a Mormon. I was a Baptist. I was searching all over the place when I was younger. Still am searching. It's just that now I depend on, slightly different. I don't depend on institutions. I depend upon, studying, like I've said before, the original languages, doing meditation. Anyway, all that stuff. The fact of the matter is that they're attacking people's conscience. You have a right to your religion, and you don't have to accept anybody else's religion. Okay, and that's really what the woke crowd is. It's a new religion, and we're being forced to try to accept it. Well, that's the government can do that, but they're hiding under this civil liberties and other legal definitions of hate crimes and stuff like that to try to get around it. It's evil, ladies and gentlemen. And to go after the Catholics, they went after I think it was a Catholic lay member of the church here some time ago when he did I think his name is Hoke, something like that. Maybe he was a Protestant. I think he's Catholic, but maybe not. But regardless, you have a right to speak up about these things. But of course, they have these federal laws to protect even statements against these horrible things that are being done to the innocent, unborn, young people. Doing these changes in them. All that stuff, forcing the medicine on them, all those things. And so good people are standing up against it, but the government wants to make you a criminal. And it's funny because as much as the New Testament has some problems, this whole thing about that they would persecute and kill the followers of Christ is coming true right before your very eyes. I'm critical of Christianity as it's developed and some of the things it's done, and some of those things, as you've seen in my presentations, I realize, and I've made the accusation that because of their stand on these things, particularly the male-female relationship, the celibacy question, and all that, they've actually fomented the environment so that these things happened. You see it in their own church. The problem with priests that have been found with boys, etc., and other things, which I don't want to get into. And people say, well, no, that's just the priest problem. Hey, just like you say in politics, personnel is policy. Okay, you have those people around, whether you want to believe it, whether you say it or not, personnel is policy. And so I hear a lot of people say this is something that happened in the Mormon church a lot. Oh, you can't judge the church by the people in it. Bullshit. Bullshit. Yes, you can, and you must. Okay, especially those who declare themselves to be the infallible vicar of Christ, representative of Christ on our earth, like the prophet or like the Pope, or the Pontifex Maximus, yeah, which by the way was actually the emperor. If you didn't know that, it's just another word of saying emperor. Caesar was known as Pontifex. I forget how that goes. Pontifex Maximus. That's not right, but anyway, that's what Caesar was. Julius Caesar. Okay, so the Pope is basically the Roman emperor. Yeah, that's the fact. They say, well, it's really because of the Bishop of Rome, who was Peter. Well, Peter was subject to James, and I don't want to get into that whole history, but regardless of all that, you're told that, they're infallible. And then in the Mormon church, for instance, you're told that the president, who's supposedly a prophet of God, it can't be make mistakes or anything like that. You're told to subject yourself to him. I reject all of that. Personnel is policy, and we've seen what these institutions do. And I'm not going to spend much time about that. Too, they've got lots of poop lines. Okay, regardless, for the government to come after them, especially individual Catholics who believe, for instance, in the Latin Mass, or don't go along with Vatican II, or believe that certain sexual practices or other things are basically taboo and even sinful. The FBI has no business labeling them terrorists. They're not a danger to anybody. Okay? You go after real crimes. You don't make them criminals by like they're doing with the like the bump stock ban. How many people bought the bump stocks? Stupid ass Trump set this up as a precedent, right? After the LV massacre, bump stocks were banned. So they made all these people, felons by even though they own this stuff legally. And now the same thing's happened apparently with these stock extensions. I forget what they're called, but the same kind of thing. So they're not going after the real criminals. They write laws to make you into a criminal. Do you understand that? And I've warned about that since my attendance to the Army Terrorism Counteraction Course back in the 80s. I saw that with, as I've repeated so many times, they didn't have just this one definition. They had all these explanations of what terrorism was, and most Americans would fall at least under one of them. And I've told you about the one that really concerned me, and that I openly talked about almost immediately at that time. If you do not get a W-2 form, you're employed, self-employed. You have 2 weeks supply of food, which is very subjective. I mean, 10 cans of food could be considered 2 weeks supply of food. They don't define what that is. And you have a firearm in the house. You are, by definition, a terrorist. So if the government comes to your neighbor's house and they raid him and they say, well, he's a terrorist, we've got evidence that he's a terrorist, they're using a definition that you would think is totally absurd. Well, they're doing the same thing with the Catholics, and that attack on the Catholics will soon move over to others. Okay, it'll move over to the born-agains and the evangelicals and the Baptists and even the Mormons. The Mormons went through all this back in the 1800s, in the early 1900s, and here we are again. All right, war crimes, that's the next category. A lot of people wonder why I haven't talked about these either, but there are a number of reasons why I haven't. We have video evidence, and there's no question it's not theater, that Ukrainian soldiers are killing POWs, Russian POWs, which is against it's just a war crime. I could talk about the Geneva Convention, but just bottom line, it's a war crime, okay? Unarmed Russian POWs, they're just blowing the brains out. And I've seen a number of these, and they're not pretend, they're not theater, they're not drama, okay? Somebody just didn't do some photoshopping. This is for real, okay? You can't tell me that people in the State Department, and the Department of Defense, and even congressmen don't know that that's going on. And if they don't, if they try to avoid it by being silent, they, under the law, become guilty of the same crime. And Scott Ritter today explained that on Redacted with Clayton and Natalie Morris. And he's absolutely right. I know from having been a military police officer, if somebody commits a war crime and the person that's with them doesn't report it, they're as guilty as the person who committed the war crime. Okay? And yet our government does it wholesale because they hate the Russians so much. They want this war in Ukraine. They want to keep laundering their money. They still want to kill off the white Christians, and they want to empty out Ukraine of white Christians. Why? I'm not going to get into that. Cliff High talks about it to some extent, and others, and some people say that's all ridiculous conspiracy theory. You're blaming the wrong people. No, there's something to it. There is. Historically, you can show it, and it's pretty obvious. I just wonder how President Putin's actually going to handle this whole thing. It's going to be interesting. But anyway, that's another story. So you have these war crimes going on that are being committed. I'm not saying that the Russians haven't done some of this too. I just haven't seen any evidence of that. And you think they claim, they hit this school over here. Well, yeah, because the Ukrainians put an artillery piece in there or a rocket launcher or whatever. Or they shot a Russian missile down, and it finally veered off course, and it hits a civilian building. I have not seen any substantial evidence of Russian war crimes in this thing. I'm not saying they haven't done it. I just haven't seen it. And you'd think that if they were as extant as they claim, there would be a lot more evidence of it. Okay. However, there's been, even the Ukrainians have put out videos showing them committing war crimes. The shooting of those Russian POWs is an example. But this last thing that's happened, okay? Let me give you the story. I'm sure you should know about it now. Scott Ritter talks about it, and some other people have talked about it. Apparently, Ukraine has been making homemade chemical weapons. Hydrogen cyanide apparently is what Scott Ritter says he thinks it is. I don't know. But I have seen a video, and some of you may have seen it too, where the Ukrainians are bragging about making these. Are they trying to set us up so that we'll accuse them of these war crimes, and then they can say, see, you guys are conspiratorialists? Well, in Syria, you had the Islamists, you had ISIS showing that they had these claimed for it. And then Trump fired the missiles into Syria. You see how this works? If war crimes are committed that help us out, we don't talk about it. Okay? Our government. So then we become complicit in the war crime under law and under morality. And nobody's calling out these. Where the hell is Senator Ted Cruz? Oh, we got to go after Russia. My senator in Wyoming, Senator John Barrasso. John, you're an asshole. You're a murderer. And I would go so far as to even say, well, I'll just hold off on that. But that's the case with many of our congressmen and senators, even the good ones. I'm not sure about MTG and all this. I just don't trust any of them. I really don't. They're all complicit in covering stuff up, but it's primarily, of course, an intelligence operation, and the DoD was involved, like I said, in the pipeline situation. That mostly as a covering force, while the CIA had their I would have to call them operatives that did the work, so that they would not Navy trained. I'm not certain that they were actually Navy personnel. But regardless, it was done under the auspices of the CIA primarily and the State Department, which makes it an intelligence operation. That's on the pipeline. But getting back to the war crimes, so these canisters, the Ukrainians have been shown bragging about making them and putting them on these drones. There's footage of that. Is that setting us up? Well, I don't know, but it's something that should, at the very least, be investigated. At the very least. And it's not being. Then there's this video of this drone dropping these canisters onto what are purportedly Russian soldiers in a trench, in a ditch. And when these things go off, of course, the gas is spread out, and you see these soldiers dying a horrible death, which is the problem with these chemical weapons, writhing in agony and going into convulsions and then drowning in this ditch. Nobody's saying anything in this God-forsaken place over here, or the God-forsaken place over here, or the God-forsaken place over here. Now, why haven't I really pushed this over the last few days? Why wasn't I up here jumping on this? Well, primarily because I'm not into jumping into a story. I want to look at it and get some. Scott Ritter's right, okay? I don't question his integrity on this, or any number of other people that have looked at it. But my question has been, where's Russia? Why hasn't Russia collected the evidence, which would be very easy to do unless the Ukrainians drag these dead soldiers, dead Russians off somewhere and burn their bodies somewhere? But the evidence, why hasn't Russia collected? Apparently, there have been other chemical attacks like this. So I don't think that this one in the ditch was a single incident. I think this has happened quite a bit. Why? What's Russia doing? What are they waiting for? With the evidence that's already out there, they could take this. Not that anybody's going to listen to them. The UN apparently is shutting anything Russia complains about down in the international court and all that, because they listen to these people. They're really paid, not the Russians, but the UN and these courts are paid by these criminals over here. But still, why isn't Russia making a big deal about this? Just in that situation alone, if they had the evidence for that, they could at least show it to the global south, to China, India, Brazil, the countries that support them, which is primarily all in the global south. There are a few exceptions, but that's primarily where it is. Why haven't they done that? So that's why I've held off on talking about these chemical attacks upon the Russians by the Ukrainians. I don't understand why the Russians aren't really sounding the alarm on this, because it's against international law, it's a war crime, and use of those kinds of weapons would justify Russia totally invading Europe and maybe even the United States. Totally justify it. Totally justify it. So I'm waiting for Russia to say something. Okay? I've given you my estimate of the situation, but I'm waiting for confirmation from the victims. Until we have a victim that comes forward and says something, we can't prove the crime. All right? That's why I haven't talked about it that much. Okay. Oh, I got to grab my other glasses here. Hold on a second. I'm sorry. I'm going to look at the chat. I'm going to use my blue blockers. I know this makes it's not nice getting out of the camera angle when we've started, but I want to answer a few questions. So that's all I wanted to cover today. The important, out of all that information, the attack on the Catholics, the use of the evidence of war crimes, this chemical attack by Ukraine on Russians, not to mention their attacks on civilian infrastructure, which the Ukrainians have done, and on civilians themselves, which Ukrainians have done as targets, and the situation with the pipeline, and then the lies out of D.C., the Pooplines. I think I've covered everything. And then, of course, the situation with the Utah doctor, Dr. Kirk Moore, and his staff that tried to do the right thing and now are being prosecuted for it. I don't have that information in this description box. It's in those other two videos where it talks about the Utah doctor, one on the live stream tab, and then I've got one in the recorded videos here. You can go to either one or to my Twitter site. Click on that, and then in that description box is where you can make donations if you'd like and learn a little bit more about the case. Okay, so we're done there, so let's do this. All right, hit the end of the world button already. I'm ready to go home now. Sometimes you get what you ask for, and it may not be what you think. Don't be that cavalier with human life, even your own. That's all I'll say about that. Yeah, we are growing weary, though, Janine Congiglieri. I'm sorry I can't say your name. But you're right. The scripture says that they would wear out the saints of the Most High, persecute them, and wear out the saints of the Most High. Hey, I got to that weary part a long time ago. Remember, I kind of slowed down these YouTube things because, Nightcap was fun, and I really want to get back into that if I can get my crazy internet connection up to where it'll handle it, because of all the extra things that you do on your streaming software and the other videos you add and all that. It's just too much bandwidth. But I would love to go back to doing those nightcasts, which were more or less for entertainment. It was kind of like the series Johnny Carson. That's how I looked at it, and it was a lot of fun. And I need. I try to do that to kind of lighten up some of the things that I do on YouTube here on this particular subject matter. But by the way, the nightcap ones that I did do are on a playlist, in the playlist on your, I guess it's on this side, I'm not sure, on your when you go on my YouTube channel, the same thing like I said before. You know, you have home, video, live, and then on the end you have playlists, and you go to playlists, and you know, I open up there. Man, I have a whole playlist on my personal life. People that go, "Oh my gosh, you know what? He did what?" Right? Uh, I've got things on FBI corruption there. I've got things on the Bundy Ranch when I was there. If you don't know about that, go look at the playlist and see what happened in southern Nevada at Bundy Ranch. It was quite a deal. And the government finally got caught with his pants down, and they had to make that go away. A few people that pled to crimes that they really didn't commit ended up going to prison, and that was sad. If they kept their mouths shut and just waited, they would have been exonerated. But at any rate, the government got some pounds of flesh out of a few people. Unjustifiably so, I might add. And then there are my religion series, my Heisenman series, and then of course my FBI corruption series, like I've talked about, and some others. So anyway, you can go to the playlist there and see some of that. I'm talking too much. Let's see what else here. Talk a lot. Talking about it a lot is draining. Yes, it is, Kate Grace. Thank you. It is, and it's depressing. And you know, I actually heard Alex Jones say this once, and it stuck with me. And you know, I have a problem with Alex because I don't want to spend 3 hours on a program and get 40 minutes, not even that, a half hour's worth of information, because there's so much entertainment going on, and the worst thing is all the commercials, right? He says he doesn't do plugs, but man, he'll have a commercial and then he'll come back and say, "Well, I haven't plugged anything for." Oh, yeah, you did. I just couldn't handle it anymore. Plus the dramatics was just too much. When you see me get truly upset, I'm truly upset. I'm not saying he isn't truly upset too, but it just gets out of control and I just can't handle it. But what he did say was that if you look too long into the abyss, you become the abyss. And that's another reason why I started entering and talking more about the spiritual religious things, and especially how it links in with history, because I am a trained historian, and I like getting that information and showing how it really relates to like the New Testament, the Old Testament, the Gnostic scriptures, all that kind of stuff. So I figured it was better to have some of that, you know, especially talking about when I do the Hebrew thing, showing you how important the Hebrew language is and how it gives you a deeper understanding if you look at it at those deeper levels. I found that was very important for me to do, not only to kind of change the conversation off of all this wicked and evil stuff that goes on in the world, which if you digest it too much, it can really hurt you. And I'll admit it was getting me down. So changing over into and doing some of these religious discussions, and I know it gets people upset because I look at things differently, but my intention is that it'll give you something else to look at. Because merely pondering on these issues puts you in a different spiritual setting, spiritual situation, where you're not feeding on all this nasty stuff. Oh yeah, you might have some questions about things. I brought those up to you. But you're thinking about things that are really important and trying to work through those. So that's the reason why I did that. So thank you, Kay, for bringing that up. Yeah, it really is too much. Is Putin holding his Sparky's run said, is Putin holding his hand waiting on something? Hold on a second, I lost you. Waiting on something, maybe bid higher before calling it, not sure. I don't read Putin's mind. Looking from a purely military standpoint and understanding the history that this is their area of the world and these are their people, really, they're all pretty much the same people. A lot of Ukrainians have been polluted by the efforts of the United States and the EU, but at any rate, I think basically, you know, I think he knows he's got the power to do it. There's nothing that the West can do to stop it now, short of nuclear weapons. There's nothing, and I think he's just doing a couple of things. And again, I can't read him, but he's set up now. He's got a defensive line so that in case their offensive for some reason or other doesn't quite go off the way they hope it will, that they can fall back to that defensive line that Cyril Vikin has put together, which is apparently extremely powerful, extremely strong. It'll protect Crimea as well. So it's probably they wanted to wait till that before they start going forward. They want to clean up some of the areas around Bakhmut and Kramatorsk and that area because they don't want anything to come in from their flanks or to cause anything internally in their lines as they move forward. Okay, so and the West is just dilly dallying around anyway. I know Russia was dilly dallying too, and this time last year, well, it wasn't this time; it was more like in March. I was saying, why is Putin dilly dallying? And I understood how strong the Ukrainian defenses were, and what I mean. They had been built up as the strongest army in Europe with all the defenses that they had just to the west of the Donbass, and I understood that. But still, you know, he was letting the supply lines open. He wasn't getting those internally in the country. He just didn't want a war against his own people. Uh, I personally think he still worries about that, but he's now in a position where he has to go forward. But they want to make sure that they've got all their cards lined up, and I think it's about there. Uh, I doubt very seriously whether Zelensky's trip to London, Brussels, and then Paris is merely to drum up weapons for Ukraine. I think he knows that something's imminent and he doesn't want to be there. I could be wrong. He might go back. I'm not sure he's even in Kyiv, frankly. When he's there, I'm not even sure he's there. But this little trip he's taken when his country's at war, you know, that guy's a little demon. You notice that? He's a little demon. He even talks like one. I don't know. Oh, you can't help the way he talks. That's what I'm saying. He's a demon. Okay? Yeah, really. Okay. AJ is uncontrolled, John Curtis says. Well, you know, again, I give him some leeway because he's looked at this. He's looked into the abyss for a long time, and he's not been able to convince people in positions of power to do something about it. They usually look the other way. Look how Senator, thank God, why am I forgetting his name? Rubio, Marco Rubio. Alex Jones, this is about 3 or 4 years ago, confronts Marco Rubio in the hallway in Congress. And Marco Rubio says, I don't know who you are. Oh, bullshit. You know? So I understand Alex's frustration. The problem is he started to want to expand and be a big operation rather than giving people information. I'm not saying he hasn't given information, but it just got to the point where that became the issue. And furthermore, looking into the abyss that long, I think it probably affected him. And then finally, what really did it for me, I mean, his backing of Trump and this whole OWS thing from the beginning, that bothered me. But what really got me was his attack on David Knight. When that happened, when he fired David Knight, who's a friend of mine, I knew things had gone too far. And I've said, I've made public statements. I don't know if Alex has seen them, but I've sent them to Greg Reese and to what's her name, Lee, I think's her name, and then of course John Bound and others saying, give this word to Alex. He needs to publicly apologize to David Knight, and he's never done it. So why? Well, he's not the Christ-like person he says he is. That's why. He's got too much pride, or he's doing somebody's bidding. I'm just saying. Jimbo Com, AJ's first hours are generally the best, most hard-hitting bird's eye view. But yes, I understand the doom and gloom. I mean, when you see a train coming down the track and your baby's sitting on the railroad tracks, you're not going to calmly say, "Hey, honey," No, you're going to be excited. No, the gloom and doom. People have got to know what the danger is. And I've even done that to a point by saying, you have to wake up to your awful situation. So it's not even that I mind. It's that I don't want to sit there for 3 hours waiting for something I can get in 20 minutes from any place else. That's really my issue with him. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we got going here. Whoops, I just goofed something up here. I don't know what that was. Let's see what that was. Okay. Hopefully I didn't change it too much there. AJ is a shill. He works with Mossad. Now. Send me some proof of that. You got to be careful making accusations like that. I'm not saying he couldn't have been used from time to time. I think we all are to some extent. But be careful with accusations like that. They can come back and bite you. Okay, I didn't mean to get off on. AJ. It was just somebody asked me the question there. Hold on, what's this here? Finding peace is important. Gloom and doom, you have to be aware of it, but you do have to continue to be at peace in yourself and with your loved ones. And as I explained to you, when I was younger and I got into, the personal relationships that I did, and if you don't know what those are, go to the playlist and you'll see what it was. I don't want to get off on that subject. But, I thought that the members of my family could handle the persecution that I was going to put them through. Not that I was going to cause a persecution, but the pressures. And that's really not fair, So, you have to take that into consideration. You're only as strong as your weakest link, and you gotta be aware of your loved ones. I mean, I often look at Jesus, and that's kind of my guiding light here, which is why I've often one sort. And I don't mean this to be about me, but um, what Jesus went through, or the person that you know as Jesus, what he went through. Think about what he put his family through by doing that. He didn't do that unawares. He knew, but he still made that choice. Well, I kind of did that too, but I probably didn't have to at the extent that I did. Who knows? You look back and you're never really sure. Okay, talk is cheap when using the keyboard. Natural loan. What are you talking about? I've been out. I don't know who you're talking to. I've been out on the front lines for 40 years. All right. I was at Bundy Ranch. I don't know who you're talking to, Natural Loan. I don't know who you're talking to, whether it's me or somebody else, but at least me, I've been out on the front line, okay? All right. Did he really, Jeff Lemon says he admitted that he had help with his IT by Israel Intelligence Agency on his show. Huh? Well, put the proof up. Put the clip up. Tell me where I can go see it. Okay? He may have had people that had been in intelligence help him out, or in the technical field. So, when you're building an organization like he did, you have to have security. Not just physical security, but you have to have electronic security and communications, signals security. It takes people with knowledge to do that. So what? So we hired somebody that had been there. So what? I don't see that as being a problem. All right. Karen Carpenter. Oh, is that your real name, or are you just using it as a pseudonym? Because Karen Carpenter, of course, she was one of my favorites, the singer of the Carpenters. Thanks for recommending David Knight. He and his friends in broadcasting are great. Tony Arterburn, Guard Goldsmith, and Bill. Yeah. I agree, 100%. Redacted's good too. Don't forget about Clayton Natalie Morris. Don't forget about the Duran with Alexander Mercouris and Alex Christoforou. I really like Gonzalo Lira. He's a little rough on the edges, but he knows his stuff. And he's always had good information, and it's not far from the mark. Nobody ever gets it 100% right, but he's done really well. As a matter of fact, I had a little conversation. Well, I sent a tweet to him the other day. I didn't get a tweet back. People usually don't want to answer me. I'm just going to mention some of these. Bettina from Headlines with a Voice, that was Nancy Morgan Hart. She was a little cautious with me at first, but, you know, she vetted me. She looked at my channel. You know, she saw my background. You know, she checked me out to make sure that I said I was who I said I was, and she opened up to me. It was really great. Not that we agreed on everything, but you know, it was just a really it was a good, strong friendship, good communication. Okay. Well, when all this, a lot of other things, I've never tried to get somebody to, like I told you the other day. You know, I'm not out there to get people who are on YouTube or Twitter to make personal contact with me, you know, as far as my email or my phone number. I don't do that to people, you know, or ask them for theirs. I don't do that. You know, I might reach out, and if they feel like it's worthwhile, they'll ask me. But at any rate, so during this whole thing, and I'm just going to tell you the story because I'm not quite sure what to make of it at this point. Some people will say, well, she's controlled opposition, but I don't believe that. Um, uh, Dr. Carrie Made, um, you know, I don't recall ever really trying to contact her, um, because a lot of people would wonder what my motivation is because I like blue eyes, right? Um, so I didn't do that, but then there was a situation with a YouTuber, I'll just put it that way, who made some accusations of her being controlled opposition. And that's the first time I tweeted her. I sent a tweet to her. She followed me. I was following her, and like a lot of people do, you know, when you follow somebody, they follow you back. But it was informal. We had not really communicated prior to that. And I tweeted her, and I basically I didn't mean to accuse her. I was saying, you know, hey, you know, I was in the army. I was a police officer for a while. You know, I'm not saying I believe this accusation, but I'd like you to let me know where you really are on this. You know, I'd really like to know. And she did write me back one time, and she says, no, that guy is stretching things. It's in his imagination. And I had known that this guy had basically thought that he could have a relationship with her. She basically, you know, turned him down. And I knew there were these other internal things that were going on. But Carrie Mate never, after that, never talked to me. I just, when I saw her come back on Twitter here about 2 weeks ago, you know, on this thing with Elon Musk getting people back on. Of course, a lot of people run into censorship again. I don't know what the hell's going on there on Twitter. But I saw that she got her account back. And so I just tweeted and said, hi, Carrie, and I'm glad to see you back. Nothing. Nothing. So a lot of people look at me and they think, you know, he was in the military. He was a cop. You know, he's probably you know, an agent. You know, he's probably a CIA asset. Or he's a squealer, or you know, one of those types of things, limited hangout or whatever. If you can't see that that's not the case with me by now, you're blind, deaf, and blind. All right, that's all I can say. Okay. Hi, Walter. How you doing? I see that you're there. Talk is cheap. Okay, we got that. Let's see. Uh, how long have we been going here? I got to get off here soon. Over an hour. Please speak on Nimrod when you have a chance to do so. Okay. Okay. I know that I think it's Ron Skiba talks a lot about that. And there's some others. Um, and it is a key, but I don't look at it as like, you know, they brought Nimrod back through CERN. I'm not saying they couldn't, but you know, I don't quite look at it quite the way most people do. So, but I'll look into. I'll see what I can do to bring that up. Okay. All right. Oh, okay, Carrinder. So that's the name your parents gave you in 1960. Yeah, I think the Carpenters came out right in that time, didn't they? Yeah. Well, that's good. Like I said, I think that's great, and I'm glad you have the name on here that and that your parents gave it to you. That's really great. Nimrod was slain by Esau. I think that's in it's in one of the extra biblical books. I do believe. Uh, I'm not sure I believe that for a number of reasons, but that's all right. I'm not saying it wouldn't be a bad thing if he did. So is Nimrod Jacob? Hell no. 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 Nimrod Jacob. You mean the one that was named Israel? Who had he had 4 wives and some concubines, or 2 wives and 2 concubines, whatever it was. No, he wasn't Nimrod. No. No. I don't know where that came from. Rastafari, I don't mean to laugh, but I mean, wow. Jacob is Israel, right. I talked about that the other day. The name Israel means he is the Prince of God. So he was God's representative on earth when he was here, according to that. No, he wasn't Nimrod. Nimrod was Babylonian, yeah, old Iraq. Okay, like I said, I probably ought to go. All right. Yeah, Nimrod probably was, let's see, who says this? K. Grace. Probably was a descendant of the Nephilim or the fallen, or the Nephilim, let's put it that way. Probably, yeah, probably so. There are a number of groups in that area, according to the biblical record and some other things that pretty much point to that. But they've all assimilated into the human race at this point, and so you wouldn't know them by looking at them. And again, I don't know what's going on down here. I don't know. I don't pretend to know, but it is odd that a lot of world leaders have ended up going to the Arctic, some Antarctic. Something weird's going down there. I don't know if they're going down there to set up a place to survive when they blow the rest of the world up, or if they're bowing down to somebody that's down. I don't know, but it is very strange. All right. Ron Skiba lived about 9 miles from me. Randy Man says in the colony. Rest in peace. He was murdered when he checked in. Yeah, I don't doubt that. My son Jeremy really liked Ron, and I did too. There were a lot of things that Ron did that were really, really good. So I'm not going to say anything other than that. By the way, as you know, I put up that video this morning on Dr. Michael Heiser, who my son also put me onto, and I found Dr. Michael Heiser to be a wonderful scholar, spiritual leader, actually, biblical scholar, historical scholar. He understood a lot of other spiritual systems, and he's on his last few days now. So that's kind of sad. We're losing a lot of good people. It's hard. And again, I'm going to go back to the thousands of people who have lost their lives, their property, their loved ones, their limbs, their whatever, in these earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, and of course the war in Ukraine. You know, these people here that have fomented all this, and I wouldn't doubt that they do have weapons to punish nations that don't go along with their banking system. Even they can control the weather, and with other systems, they could probably, even though the sun's primarily concerned with controlling our weather and even our geological activities. The fact of the matter is they could exacerbate that solar influence by weapons of high energy. Yeah, I have no doubt about that. Okay, I better go. I'm going to lose the signal here any minute anyway. So thank you for coming. I wanted to do this real quick tonight. I hope you see where I am on this again, on the chemical weapons used by Ukraine. Allegedly at this point, I think the evidence is very strong that they have. Scott Ritter agrees, and some other people that I've had, by the way, nuclear, chemical, biological training. I was an NC nuclear, chemical, biological accidents and control officer when I was in the Army. I had control of a specific region for some time. But at any rate, I have no doubt that that's happening, at least from the appearances of these videos. The question is that's supposed to be a violation of international law and a war crime, and because Ukraine's doing it, nobody's going to say anything about it. I'm just waiting for Russia. Once Russia comes out and says yes, Ukraine deployed chemical weapons against Russian troops, then it's all on. It's on. And whatever Russia does to protect itself at that point is justified. End of story. Okay. Thanks everybody for coming. Again, remember the doctor who is standing up against this whole thing in Utah, because this will have ramifications across the country, as the attack on the Catholics is going to have ramifications across the country and across many religious Christian denominations, etc., not just the Catholics. Same thing with this doctor. It's going to have ramifications on anybody who has tried to protect people from this onslaught. And so if you go to the last two videos I did, one on the live stream, which is on this tab, talking about the Utah Dr. Hero, and then you can go to the video portion and see one that I recorded today, so I'd get both groups of people. And then in the description boxes of those videos, you can find out more on the story, number one. Number two, where to make very important and needed donations. This doctor's not wealthy, and they're not just the doctor, but the head nurse and two other people. One's a receptionist, and I'm not sure what the other person's place is there. But at any rate, 4 people that the government's going after, and yet they won't. The government won't go after the people that set up the labs, the research, the deployment of the sickness, and the deployment of the treatment of the sickness, which is really worse than the sickness itself. All right? Okay. All righty. That's all I got. Keep your eyes on the horizon, your ears to the ground, situational awareness on high. Keep prepping, praying, and defend yourself, but don't go looking for trouble. Try to stay out of the way. Do as much as you can with your friends, your families, the people you can trust. And as I told these people over at the doctor's office, FBI has InfraGard everywhere. You can't, and the CIA, they all have spies. Your best friend might be a spy, spying out your liberties and reporting it to some agency somewhere, even though you're not doing anything illegal. Just that you have a food supply, or that you own a weapon, or that you have that you think that the Constitution is important, or that the FBI is corrupt. I mean, all this stuff they consider to be domestic terrorism. Okay, so you don't know who to trust, but try to get people you can trust, and formulate these relationships and build up a situation where you can withstand it when this whole system starts to fall apart, and then they need a new enemy, so they come after you. I gave the information the other day about the banking situation from Redacted, that the bail-ins are starting to happen in Europe and Africa, and even here with the Bank of America and Wells Fargo. It's already happening, where they're taking money out of accounts because the government lets them to pay their debts. That's the easiest way to say it. They're not being bailed out by the government. They're using bail-ins. Money you've put in there, they take, and you never see it again. Thanks, everybody. Looks like we're losing the signal. I'll see you later out here.